U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is in Israel. Blinken echoed America's strong support for Israel as he held a press conference with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Blinken said that Israel has the right to make sure that an event like this never happens again. He also said that the U.S. is working together with the people in the region, and the U.S. is aiming to make a more prosperous, more secure Middle East. Take a listen.
The message that I bring to Israel is this. You may be strong enough on your own to defend yourself, but as long as America exists, you will never ever have to. We will always be there by your side. That's the message that President Biden delivered to the Prime Minister from the moment this crisis began. We know Hamas didn't commit its heinous acts with the interests of Palestinian people in mind. We know Hamas does not stand for the future that Palestinians want for themselves and for their children. Hamas has only one agenda: to destroy Israel and to murder Jews.
U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken also vowed more ammunition supplies for Israel, as well as interceptors for its Iron Dome. He confirmed that some shipments of support have already arrived in Israel and more support from the U.S. is well on its way. Blinken will also aim to secure the release of hostages abducted by Hamas militants. A senior U.S. State Department official said that the United States is also working on advancing talks on providing a safe passage for civilians. This includes American citizens. Until now, at least 25 U.S. citizens have died. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also thanked U.S. President Joe Biden for his support. While concluding his address, he thanked the United States for standing with Israel during the conflict with Hamas. Biden and Netanyahu also discussed the situation. This was the fifth phone call between the two leaders. Meanwhile, back here in the United States, while addressing U.S. Jewish community leaders at the White House, President Biden urged Netanyahu to, quote unquote, follow the rules of war.
And I believe Israel is doing everything in its power to pull the country together, stay on the same page, and we're going to do everything in our power to make sure Israel succeed, and God willing, to bring home those Americans who are in harm's way.
This was the first time Biden made any kind of call for restraint over Israel's response. At the same time, the president warned one of Hamas's biggest backers, Iran. It's the first time that he mentioned Iran by name as well.
Iron Dome, when we moved the U.S. carrier fleet to the Eastern Mediterranean, and we're sending more fighter jets there in that region, and made it clear to the Iranians, be careful.
Meanwhile, a comment by President Biden has pushed the 80-year-old president to a difficult situation. During his address, the president confirmed that he saw images of Hamas militants beheading children. However, later, a White House spokesperson said that U.S. officials and the president have not actually seen these pictures or confirmed such reports independently, while adding that Biden based his comments on the claims from Prime Minister Netanyahu's spokesperson and media reports from Israel. Analysts believe that these kinds of comments coming from the U.S. president can complicate things, as disinformation from the top can lead to provocation on the ground as well. Before we go to our guests, we spoke to our correspondent Jody Cohen on the latest updates in Israel. Jody has been covering the Israeli-Hamas conflict for us very closely from ground zero. Take a listen to what she had to say.
So today we've seen sirens and rockets fired from Hamas in Gaza into central and southern Israel. 4 people have been wounded, 2 seriously in the town of Sderot. And this afternoon we've seen rockets fired also aimed at Jerusalem. Now the IDF is carrying out more strikes in Gaza and said that they're crippling Hamas's ability to function. And President Herzog has said that the grieving Israel is prepared for a long military campaign against Hamas. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu has said he's compared Hamas to ISIS and said that Israel will destroy Hamas. As you said, they're forming a unity government, and there's going to be a small security cabinet made up of Prime Minister Netanyahu, Defence Minister Gallant, and former Defence Minister Benny Gantz, who was in the opposition until today. That's being voted on in the parliament today, and they said that they're going to be working together, focused on tackling and targeting Hamas. Now, meanwhile, NATO ministers have been shown uncensored video of Hamas's atrocities in the southern communities. And President Herzog has confirmed that, unlike Hamas, he said, Israel abides by international law and has a right to defend itself. And we saw Secretary of State Anthony Blinken landing in Israel earlier and saying that Israel doesn't just have a right to defend itself, but it has an obligation.
We're now being joined by Morgan Vina, former aide to U.S. Ambassador to the UN during the Trump administration, Nikki Haley. She's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Morgan, welcome to WION, and thank you so much for joining us. You know, Israel is clearly preparing for the next stage of war, and Prime Minister Netanyahu has vowed to wipe out Hamas with Secretary of State Blinken's arrival. Now, some are talking about perhaps a negotiated settlement of some sort between the two sides and maybe leaders in the region as well. Is that even a possibility at this point?
Thank you for having me first. And second, I think the United States and the international community should let Israel prosecute this war. It is far too early to be discussing any type of ceasefire or peace talks. Israel just suffered its own 9/11. And at this point, Israel needs to defend its people. It needs to defend its territory against a terrorist organization hell-bent on wiping Israel off the map. Clearly, Hamas is backed by Iran. There is strong evidence that demonstrates Iran has funded Hamas for years, and Israel needs to ensure that its own survival is sustainable at this point. It's far too early to be discussing any type of peace talks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you compared it to 9/11 here in the United States. One analyst said it was like George Bush wanting to talk about ceasefire after 9/11 or talking about a ceasefire after Pearl Harbor with Japan. What is your assessment on the intel failure? Israel missed it. What has surprised the world is that the U.S. missed it as well.
Yeah, this is a clear embarrassment for Israel, who prides itself on advanced intelligence. That border with Gaza is manned by observation posts. The IDF have generally an excellent sense of what's going on along that border at all times. They have a tunnel detection system that is co-produced with the United States. This is something that Israel is going to have a significant after action assessment about. Right now, it's far too early. They are in the fog of war and they are focusing on prosecuting this war. But those questions will be asked, and there will be, I can guarantee you, an intense investigation into the intel failings here.
There's a lot of talk about what this war and how it will have an impact on possible peace talks between Israel and the Saudis. But do you think this war will also have an impact on the Abraham Accord?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think we've seen a lackluster support for Israel coming out of the Arab states. I think Morocco in particular, their statement was more supportive than others. Look, normalization should absolutely continue. This is something that is a very important platform for isolating Iran and bringing the region together, not only for trade and culture, but significantly for defense. There are a ton of areas where Israel and its Arab partners can cooperate, particularly on integrated air and missile defense. This is something that is critical for the region's security. And moving forward, peace talks, particularly between normalization talks, I should specify, are critical for not only Israel's security, but for the Gulf region as well.